People have begun to see themselves more as Taiwanese than Chinese, and the economy has boomed. But that has had social and environmental consequences. Indigenous peoples and minorities struggle for recognition, while views of China divide politics into camps, pro-China blue and pro-sovereignty green.
所以我觉得说，虽然说同性恋还是自由的，可是在其中，他们其实还有点算弱势的一方，他们还是有一些被误解的地方存在。所以我觉得能来今天这个活动，就希望说大家可以对同性恋就是再保持一个开阔一点的心，就是即使你不是同性恋。
With democracy, protest has burgeoned, making up for the lost years. Thanks in part to these movements, Taiwan ranks 6th in the world for gender equality. In 2019, it became the first in Asia to allow gay marriage. Gradually, issues are being teased out in these social actions, but none made a bigger leap than the 2014 Sunflower Movement. It was a protest against the trade deals with China signed by KMT President Ma Ying-jeou. But when Ma pushed the deals too far, skirting democratic processes, endangering media freedom, service jobs, and Taiwan sovereignty, outrage was sparked. The leaderless, spontaneous movement, named after the blooms brandished by the participants, was backed by thousands who besieged and occupied the legislature for 23 days. At its climax, the protest brought out Taiwan's largest ever political rally, 500,000 people.
有青年学生，有 NGO 工作者，那也有很多各行各业的上班族、市民，好，但是不可否认的，冲进立法院的那群人，很多是年轻人，然后这群年轻人的特质，基本上可以这样讲，他们是大概就是台湾如果说1990年是台湾民主化的象征的年代的话，这群人基本上就是1990年台湾民主化出生的一个新的世代。太阳花运动鼓舞了台湾人的勇气。好，就是台湾人因为整个台湾民间社会因为太阳花运动而更加有希望的感觉。好，那过去很多人会认为说，中国是一个大国，好，那台湾是一个小岛，好，那觉得台湾面对中国，就只能够顺从。好，那太阳花运动，打破了这个想法。在太阳花运动刚结束的时候，我们会说，太阳花运动，扩大了这个公民社会，关心政治、参与政治的比例，让整个公民社会的力量，茁壮。
This 36-year-old Sunflower veteran was later elected as a councilor in the Taipei city government and ran for national legislature in 2024.
所以我觉得比较可惜的是说，当这个社会运动结束之后，他在政治上面的代言人，跟他在政治上面的影响力其实是分散的。那这也导致了这场社会运动，它改变了台湾的历史，但是它并没有真正的撼动了台湾的政治板块。
你最担心的在台湾的前途是什么？
我觉得台湾现在最大的问题是，我们面临一个非常大的外在的威胁，就是中国。那在中国的威胁之下，照理来讲，一个正常国家应该是每一个政党都要有同样的一个反并吞的路线。那不管是什么颜色的党，都是反并吞，都是认真的推动国防， 然后认真的捍卫台湾的主权，然后在这个下面，我们来讨论很多的经济议题、内政议题有什么的不一样，让人民来选择。可是台湾有个很大的问题是，在台面上的这些主要的政党，似乎目前有能力执政的政党之中，只有民主进步党，它在国防跟外交上的立场是相对明确的，所以这变成台湾人民在选择的时候遇到一个困难。就是如果我要保护台湾的民主自由的独立的现状，那我好像选项非常有限。
谢谢，老板辛苦了。2号苗博雅，2号苗博雅，大家注意，候选人。
I like to visit food markets. This one in Hualien offers aromatic cornucopias of fresh food, from handmade dumplings and pork stews to fish and chicken and pork butchered as you wait, and all manner of tofu and fresh garden vegetables and fruits. Just a couple of hours' flight from Taiwan along the southern coast of China, one arrives at Hong Kong, the former British colony. In 1997, it was handed back to China. Despite promises to allow its 7.5 million people to keep their autonomous government for 50 years, recently China began to renege, imposing authoritarian control while persecuting political dissidents. Thousands of exiles fled abroad. I met one such exile in Taiwan.
My name is Kim Man Chen.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Hong Kong. I was a professor in Hong Kong. But I was sentenced to jail because of the umbrella movements. After I was released from jail, 1 year or so, then I came here as a visiting scholar. Well, what we call this learning war is a place for people to express their political opinion.
This wall of protest is preserved as a tribute to the post-it notes and poems that adorned public Hong Kong walls during the pro-democracy protests. Hong Kong had been guaranteed its autonomy under what China called one country, two systems, but China's backtracking led to the 79-day umbrella protests in 2014, so named for demonstrators' use of umbrellas against pepper spray. The protest was inspired in part by Taiwan's sunflower movement a few months earlier. New plans for a crackdown on Hong Kong's freedoms triggered the 2019 protests that brought out nearly 2 million marchers. That wave of discontent rebounded on Taiwan when DPP President Tsai Ing-wen came out in support of the Hong Kong protesters. Standing up to China swung Taiwan's elections, giving her victory.
Because of the Hong Kong protests, suddenly people believe that it is important to support Tsai and his party to be the next, government. So it already changed the political landscape so much in 2019 because of the protests in Hong Kong. People, Taiwanese, started to realize how horrible is the arrangement of one country, two system. How untrustworthy is Beijing. Even they make a promise of giving Hong Kong autonomy. So at the end, they could crack down on Hong Kong media and civil society so ruthlessly. So it really an awakening process to many Taiwanese because of the Hong Kong incident.
What happened in Hong Kong and the increasing restraints imposed by Beijing, especially the draconian national security laws of 2020 and 24, sent a chilling message back to Taiwan, captured in the slogan, Hong Kong today, Taiwan tomorrow.
I've come to Hong Kong to find out what has happened here and how it's affected people's lives. But I'm restricted by the new national security law, which means that if I interview anyone, say that gentleman over there, and ask him a question and broadcast it, he could get thrown in jail and I could get thrown in jail.
Some do support Chinese backroom rule of Hong Kong, but behind the scenes simmers a wide and deep discontent. I met one of the few who dared speak out. I asked about freedom of speech.
Not too many years ago, we were ranked number 18, and now we are 145. So it looks like Hong Kong's sort of fallen off the cliff. A number of news media organizations have folded up. Journalists are now languishing in jail, and quite a number of journalists have fled from Hong Kong.
What is it that makes you feel you need to be careful? I mean,
Because so many people have been arrested.
what are they? What is it? Where is the line that you?
Nobody knows. That's the problem with the NSL, the National Security Law. And not just me. Business people, chambers of commerce, professional people, politicians, they all say the lines are not clear.
She went on to explain that teachers have to be very careful not to transgress for fear that they will be reported by students, while she lamented the loss of some 400,000 professionals who have fled Hong Kong.
So these people are scared. They may not be arrested, but they don't want to take a chance, and they don't want their kids to be brought up in this environment.
I repeatedly heard exiles in the UK and Taiwan saying fears of what they called brainwashing of their children contributed to their reasons for leaving. In Hong Kong, as in China, the school day includes so-called patriotic education, inculcating loyalty to China and its cleansed version of history. Textbooks are being revised in line with doctrine. Hong Kong's language, Cantonese, meanwhile, is being displaced by Mandarin Chinese. I asked Lau for her advice for Taiwan in dealing with China. She said Taiwan differs from Hong Kong. It has its own military, which China said it can keep. This is bargaining power. But she said Taiwan will need to cut a deal.
But first of all, is whether the Taiwanese people want to bargain. If they just don't even want to talk, if they just want the status quo, don't touch us, but we don't want to be reunited or whatever, well, they will have to find a way to tell China and hope China will not attack them.
Hong Kong authorities, who follow official Chinese views, see things differently. I asked whether what Hong Kong has is what Taiwan can anticipate.
In other words, as I say, it's a compromise. Now, the compromise we have in Hong Kong, hopefully, may be a good start for Taiwan, or it may not be. Taiwan may want to say, well, I want something extra. But at the bottom of it, there is always the bottom line, which is the one country. So Taiwan has got to go back to the full bosom of motherland, but under that, you can have differences.
Dismissing the need for democracy and denying free speech was limited, Tong also blames the protests on those he termed rioters, encouraged by outside political forces. Similar blinkered ideas are typically entertained by more pro-government Hong Kongers. Back in Taiwan, I asked a Hong Kong exile about dehumanization of democracy protesters. Some people call them cockroaches.
And this framework is also the propaganda that the policemen and also the Hong Kong government wants to push forward, to say that these are the bad people, these are the good people.
He had a similar parting with a friend before leaving Hong Kong.
And he drove me home after the dinner, and we talked a lot, and of course we quarreled a lot. He has said, stability is the key. They don't want democracy. What they want is good way of living. They want to stay low on politics, but to really earn money. Make sure that they can have a stable home. They think that all the protesters are stirring up the troubles in Hong Kong. They will see to themselves, their family. They are selfish, but they do not want to see what is the public good. But if Hong Kong really put a society together, then people will need to think about the others. How this community, this society can really have a common aim and common goal.
Hong Kong used to have open elections, but now only Chinese Communist Party approved candidates can run for office. Enthusiasm for the non-contest was at record lows in the 2023 elections. The way China and Taiwan have evolved plays a big role in the way they feel about one another. To fathom their national characters, I talked to a businessman among the million Taiwanese who now live and work mostly in China.
我觉得在中国，我们对人会比较小心，我们会先做一个 protection， 我们会比较注意 我们可能会在还没有认识他多一点之前，我们不会告诉他太多的事情。可能是因为我们是外地人，所以我们在那个地方我们会特别小心。可是，在台湾我们比较没有这种防备心，我们会比较 open-minded，就是我们会看到人我们都是台湾人，那我们会彼此之间的信赖程度会比较高。
He thinks the contrast is based on something fundamental.
我觉得最大的差别是在台湾这个环境里面，不管怎么样，有存在很多不同的信仰，每个人有一个自由的信仰。在中国，我认为他们的信仰是钱，因为他们没有所谓的信仰。那当没有信仰的时候，剩下一个最重要的事情就是钱。所以凡是用钱来衡量价值，用钱来衡量人与人之间的关系。
He blamed their attitude on China's 1960s and 1970s unrest known as the Cultural Revolution, which spread moral pessimism and tore friend, family, and values apart, including religions. In contrast, Taiwan has lots of religious activity. The biggest is Buddhist, followed closely by Taoism. Less than 4% are Christians. He believes people in Taiwan tend to seek what he called a comfortable life rather than riches. When I asked how people on both sides differ, I heard about studies of Chinese reactions to life in Taiwan.
Chinese visitors expressed their surprise how they were dealt with in Taiwan, in Taiwanese society, by strangers. For example, bus drivers, service people in the 7-Eleven or in the department store. This is what I called strangers' relation.
For 20 years, he has studied behavior in China, which is a highly unequal society. He found that people won't treat those outside their social circle, that is to say, strangers, with sincerity or equality.
Taiwan is a more equal, much more equal society. So Taiwanese people, in this sense, is more westernized, which is more individualized. So in this sense, or you can say it's more civilized. People were individually equal, socially, not only politically.
When recently Chinese tourists visited Taiwan, many Taiwan residents were put off by the visitors' vulgarity, loud speech, spitting in public, and littering. But what most created friction was Chinese people's belief that Taiwan is part of China.
Chinese people don't understand why Taiwanese people don't think they are part of China. We are from the same ancestors. Okay, this is what Chinese people think. How come you Taiwanese betray your family ancestors and believe in independence? So this hurt Chinese and anger all the Chinese. Taiwanese people don't think Taiwan should be part of PRC, but Chinese people don't understand this. So that's the major division between Taiwan and China.
Taiwan, so long separated from China, has been influenced by many other cultural relationships. This peanut farmer and former videographer turned his family's traditional farm into a seller of gourmet peanuts. He has a feel for food fashions.
我们在台湾，我有发现，其实我们的饮食习惯其实蛮 westernized，就是很西方，就是只要是新的东西，台湾就很快就会吸收进来。不就是新的，对台湾人对于新的事物是接受度很高的。就比如说最早，比如说我们台湾吃 hamburger 这个。可能有以前早期有美军一来的，台湾人很快的就接受了那个 hamburger 的习惯，三明治。
那为什么没有自信？
为什么没有啊？没有 proud of 自己的做的事情。普遍上来讲，进口的，这个美国来的，这个德国来的，这个日本来的，都觉得好棒。台湾的还好。
Such openness to the outside and multiculturalism are key to Taiwan, which has also welcomed 1 million foreign workers and migrants, mostly from Southeast Asia. This has brought new social tensions. This caught my eye. Dancers are trying out all latest moves in the Brazilian capoeira, popular in Taiwan, where people are eager to learn styles from all over. Here at the offices of New Bloom magazine, I learned how Taiwan's global conflict zone star status dates from 2022.
Nancy Pelosi, the then U.S. Speaker of the House, her visit to Taiwan. So as the first U.S. Speaker of the House to visit Taiwan in 25 years. And so then China responds with military drills. These are close to Taiwan. They're during the third Taiwan Straits crisis. And so there's such much more focus on Taiwan after that, because the notion that it can be a dangerous flashpoint.
Pelosi's visit was intended to show American support for Taiwan's democracy. China responded aggressively with live fire exercises and a simulated blockade of Taiwan. To Beijing, Pelosi's gesture went contrary to a deal to keep hands off Taiwan agreed with the U.S. in the 1970s, when under President Richard Nixon, the U.S. recognized Beijing as the sole government of China and acknowledged but did not recognize China's claim that Taiwan was part of China. That left open who had the right to govern Taiwan. Washington just encouraged China and Taiwan to reach a peaceful settlement. Since Pelosi, China has ratcheted up pressure on Taiwan with gray zone harassment, most recently meting out what they called punishment for President Lai's 2024 inauguration. But the Taiwan public has grown so used to Chinese bluster that these actions arouse scant concern. These air raid drills in 2023 were met with boredom.
And so it is kind of just like my everyday environment. And so people are like, yeah, people are freaking out in the streets and seeking out air raid shelters and that kind of thing. I'm just like, no, people are just going about life and going to convenience stores and walking around and shopping or whatever. And so just life goes on in that sense.
But the threat is real. The incursions are also military probes and feints that may be part of a future attack. China is massively building up its military forces. According to U.S. intelligence, it would be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. But invading, or hybrid strategies such as a blockade, pose challenges much, much greater than the Russians faced in moving overland into Ukraine. For one, Chinese forces would have to cross the 160-kilometer-wide Taiwan Strait, known for its rough seas, in the face of what could be determined resistance. This makes invasion extremely risky, costly, and liable to failure. It is a last resort for China while it tries to bring about Taiwan's early capitulation by other means.
所以，对中国而言，他跟你做任何的交流，他其实真正的目的，他念之在之的，他的终极的目标就是希望兼并台湾。当然以他们的政治正确的用语，他们说这个叫做统一台湾。
China constantly manipulates cross-strait trade, selectively shutting off its market to Taiwan's agricultural goods, for example. It strong-arms everyone from businessmen to politicians and journalists to oppose the ruling party, the DPP. Many Taiwanese performers routinely avoid politics for fear of being banned in China. For having waved an ROC flag on TV, this singer was forced to give a humiliating public apology. But that made China look like a bully. So now it just makes them declare they are Chinese and favor unification. China also uses espionage.
中国搞间谍是人海战术，人海战术就是我就100万人、200万人，我就这样撒下去，资源撒下去，有的可能成功，有的可能不成功，但是成功的能够为中国共产党所用，那它就能够发挥相当大的功能，大概中国是以这样的大规模的方式在做 我们叫做对台湾的统战工作。
跟中国的打战已经开始了没有？
对我来讲，战争一直都在进行当中。因为现代的战争它比较复杂，它不是只有一般的陆海空军的作战而已，它包含网络的作战，包含统战的工作，外交战、贸易战、金融战，还有像我最着重的认知作战，就是舆论战。
Among the most insidious threats are those that come via disinformation on the internet and via news media. Taiwan gets more of that aimed at it than any other place in the world. The constant barrage aims to sow discord.
让大家彼此之间有很大的一种仇恨，这个是他想要在我们的社会制造的。他最希望说那个仇恨是能够到内战的程度。
But of late, Chinese cajoling and threats, focusing on, for example, the benefits of its one country, two systems offer, have fallen flat.
所以他慢慢就要改变他的战术。所以他现在非常重要的战术，不是说中国有多好，有些年轻人听不进去啊，说中国有多好，他不想听这些。所以他目的反而改成告诉你美国有多烂，日本有多烂。就说哦，你说中国有人权问题，美国、日本也都有人权问题。所以当他这样子的方式，会让更多的，尤其是年轻人，会觉得每一个国家都有自己的 propaganda， 每个国家其实都在做类似的事情。所以当他觉得每一个国家都差不多的时候，他在慢慢告诉你说，其实中国对我们很好，那个效果才会好。那这个都是为了要铺成最后的，不管是战争的投降，还是战争前的或战争后的和平协议，那个是他最重要的目的。
Perhaps even more worrisome than the cognitive and economic warfare, however, is whether Taiwan is prepared for military conflict with China.